Everybody, welcome to Junkyard Theory, and tonight's guest is a screenwriter, a novelist, and a producer. She's also the driving force behind the recent Justin Timberlake star, Palmer. And I got Cheryl Guerriero in the house. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining. Ayubowan.
Ayubowan? If I said it correctly. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. It's been a while since we've been trying to get you on the show, and schedules lined up, and here we are. And I gotta say, Palmer was amazing. I know it's the second time I'm saying this, but truly it was one of those movies that leaves you feeling good. Was this always the intention behind the story, or?
Sorry, what was the intention behind the story?
Yeah, like, was it always supposed to leave the audience feeling good?
Absolutely. And by the way, I could never get bored of hearing you say how much you like the film. But yeah, I mean, I'm someone, probably why I became a writer, or my love of movies is because of how they left me feeling. Certain movies that influence this, I just keep referencing Little Miss Sunshine, even though this is different than that movie, Little Miss Sunshine. I remember at the end of that movie, I just had like goosebumps. I loved how I felt after that movie. I like all types of films. Like I do like horror. I love thrillers. But for me, I just always love how movies leave me feeling. So that definitely was the intention of to feel hopeful and to cry. Hopefully to cry at some point.
Yeah, I think, I was reading up the reviews after watching the movie, and there were quite a few people who said that it left them in tears, like at least in one point. So I think you guys definitely achieved that. But, talk to me a little bit about your origin story. How did you get into filmmaking? You've made 2 movies before this, but tell us what was the story, leading up to all of that?
Sure. Yes, I did have 2 other films. It's funny, like before Palmer got made, people would be like, "Oh, have I seen anything that you made?" And God bless, but the first film didn't turn out how I had hoped. I mean, literally, I was in a theater and some guy yelled out, "This movie effing sucks," and I just wanted to. So I'm so much, I love the reception to Palmer, but yeah, how I got into writing. I mean, basically, I hated what I was doing to make money. I've always been very athletically inclined. I went to college. I played sports. I don't know, what was my degree. I don't even know what my degree was. I don't even, it doesn't serve me today. Although I did.
How do you forget that?
No, I had a bachelor's of science. You know what? I don't know, marketing maybe. But anyway, I was very athletically inclined. I got out of college and I was working for a sports agent. Then I was working for a sports apparel. We outfitted, we call it football, football teams, American football. And I had some other, I just was not happy. And I've always loved movies as a little kid. I always loved movies. I always creative. I always did well in arts and crafts. Like I would make lions and tigers, like out of clay, and everyone was making a bowl. Like my imagination, like I was always imagining being somewhere else. Wherever I was, I wanted to be somewhere else. And in my mind, I was sometimes. But anyway, I just had an idea. I just had an idea for a movie. And I bought books on how to write a screenplay. I read scripts. I watched the movie, and I'd say, okay, this happens here, here, here. And then and that was the moment when I first sat down to write a screenplay. I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a writer. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. And, I didn't know anyone. I don't have anyone in the business. I didn't know anybody. And it's just perseverance and knocking on doors and asking, hey, will you read my screenplay? And I worked for a film company, a company called, they're still like New Line Cinema. And I have friends there. And, it was like guys that, I'm like, will you read my script? Tell me what you think. And I just kept pursuing it. And then, I got this company paid, like I got a check one day and I'm like, look, Mom, see, I got paid. It was like nothing, but they had optioned a screenplay, and that just kind of gave me hope to keep going. And then I got a manager, and then I'd get something else optioned, and I just kept going. And then my first film that got made, it got made like that. Like Palmer took 10 years to get made, and that first film got made like that. And I'd much rather the experience, to be honest, with Palmer and have someone as talented as Justin Timberlake star in it, and the little boy and Ryder and Juno Temple and Alicia Wainwright. And it's just amazing. And Fisher Stevens directing it. But my first produced film, I was living in New York City, and this guy who had read that's how a lot of it worked for me. Someone had read me and said, oh, Cheryl's a good writer. You should read what she's written. And he passed it on to another gentleman who said, okay, this is the kind of film we want to make. And I put together how I would, my treatment on it. And I was with one of my friends from high school, and I said, look, if I get this job, I want you to write with me because she's super funny. And was voted most likely to succeed in high school. But that film wasn't very successful. So, but anyway, and that's how, we wrote the script, and it got made like that. And I feel blessed to have that happen. It got me in the Writers Guild. The end product didn't turn out how we had hoped, but that's to no fault of anyone that starred in it. It was just truly, it was like a mismanaged company, that production. And it was, you live and learn. And I look back and I'm grateful that first movie was so horrible because, it just makes you more, I don't know, it's just part of my story. The first one didn't move me into some other world of my career. I just had to still keep going. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned Palmer took 10 freaking years to get made.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned perseverance, which, it's an essential quality if you want to be in this business. So getting Palmer made, the script got into the Hollywood blacklist as well in 2016, if I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about how things, snowballed from that point onwards.
Sure. So Palmer was original screenplay. I was inspired to write it. And so basically, God, there's a lot, 10 years. At the time I wrote Palmer, I did not have a manager. And again, it was another situation. It was a guy who had read me, and he didn't represent writers, but he gave it to someone who did represent writers. And the interesting thing at that time is there were two owners of the company. One had passed on representing me with Palmer, and the other partner was a female partner. She was like, I want to represent you. I love this script. I love your writing. And basically, long story short, at that time they sent it, they gave it to one producer. Immediately he picked it up. Super smart guy. Really liked him. Unfortunately, him and his partner weren't able to get anything going with Palmer. And this was before 2016. And so I got the script back. Long story short, nothing was happening with it. And it was frustrating. I'm like, why is this script sitting? There was another gentleman, another actor who wanted to direct it, and he just saw it completely different. And I'm like, no, we're not. This isn't a revenge story about a guy who gets out of prison seeking revenge. I'm like, we're on this different page. So basically I ended up going to a different manager because I felt like nothing was happening. I thought as individuals, as people, I thought they were great, but I just wanted, as far as my career and how it was being managed and what was going on, I needed a change. And like any relationship, so my current manager, I had met with him, he read Palmer and he's like, why is this script sitting? Why isn't it gone all over town? And I said, exactly. And, it's grit and it's hard work. And so he and I started working together, and in 2016, he sent it out all over, Hollywood, and it got voted on, and it ended up getting on the blacklist of Hollywood, which is best unproduced screenplays that people have read within the industry. And then at a certain point, Fisher Stevens read the script, and he had been given like 8 scripts, and he's like, this is the one I want to direct. So Fisher and I started working with one another. And, you know, long story short, Justin Timberlake read the script, responded to it, obviously, met with Fisher, and then met with me, and then we clicked. We were all on the same page of how, you know, things that maybe we were going to change or what we would dive deeper into. And it was like, I hope that every other working relationship moving forward is as enjoyable as it has been with Fisher and Justin, and, you know, creatively. It was great. Yeah.
It's good to have amazing collaborators, right?
I'm very, and I'm even now, you know, right now I'm working with people who that's what that I love working with. And it just makes a difference. Like I was like Fisher Stevens and Justin Timberlake, I was involved in everything. And with Fisher, even prior to Justin, I went on a location scout with him and another producer. I was there during the filming, all of it, and it truly was collaborative. Like it was because that's how, you know, Fisher works. That's how Justin works. They believe in the value of collaboration. So
it's very rare that you hear about a writer being on set, but you were there.
I was, yeah.
Every single day, right?
Every single day, pre-production, exactly. And that is because of Fisher, and that's because of Justin, because not everyone wants the writer around, but they saw the value of it, and I think I did, add value, and my voice was there on the page, and I think they obviously respected that. And I'll tell you, there's things that Justin came to the table with that I'm like, thank you, that, made it a scene even better. And Fisher, how he saw the film, keeping it he wanted it to be very realistic. And obviously, so did I. And I think what I love too is people, have walked away feeling like, this felt very real to them.
That it did. And yeah. Speaking about that, the characters, when you wrote them, was it based on any real life people, or was it all like fictionalized?
Sure. I think everything I write comes from, obviously I'm not, a straight male who spent time in prison, but I am an athlete, and I've been around guys who, I remember that I had a college experience, and if I could be anyone, I'd be Tom Brady. I don't know if you know who Tom Brady is, but he's so good.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. So, I remember in college, there was this guy, he was a good looking guy, and he was the quarterback, and he was so drunk. And I remember thinking, you have a game tomorrow. And I would have done anything to being able to play, be the college quarterback. And so there's certain things, I've been around gentlemen who have spent time in prison, then got out and then turned their lives around. I'm gay. I knew I was gay at 8. And some people are like, oh, how do you know you were gay at 8? And I'm like, because I fell in love with another little girl at 8. Now, for me, the character of Sam and Ryder, for me, it was more, I may know where this child ends up, but for our story, this is a little boy who lives in a world where you're expected to play football, where you're expected to be a certain way, and he's not. And the difference between that child, Sam, and me is I was a little girl, and I have a lot of memories. I remember I was 8 years old in my parents' backyard playing in the dirt. I was with trucks, and I loved anything the boys were playing with. And the shoes that I bought for school, there was a boy section and a girl section. I always wanted to go to the boy section, but I didn't, because I wasn't like the child I wrote, Sam, in the movie, is unapologetic. He just likes what he likes, and he's not there is no shame. Now, I was a little girl. I remember playing in the dirt, and I had an uncle come up to me and say, Cheryl, and I'm 8 years old, I'm minding my business. I'm so happy in the dirt with my trucks. And he comes up to me and he says, Cheryl, you're a girl, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, girls aren't supposed to play with trucks and in the dirt. And he just completely shamed me. And I remember he walked away, and I felt so much shame because I didn't understand. I'm like, I'm a girl. And I'm a little kid. I'm 8 years old or 7, thinking this is what I like. So as an adult, and clearly it's been many years since I've been 8 years old, but it was important to me to show a child that I wish I would have said what Sam said when Palmer goes, you don't see any other boys on that show. What does that tell you? And it says, I can be the first. And that just, that was like the flow of God, because I wish, when I write things, sometimes I wish I had said that at that point in my life. And so it all came from somewhere. And I'm familiar with drug addiction. I'm familiar with adoption. There's a lot, like when Shelley gives him away, and Juno Temple is just amazing. I mean, that she's amazing. And what I didn't know, because she was shooting Ted Lasso, and all I knew is the first day of filming. I'm just going to go off on her for a second because she's so humble and so talented, and all of them were. I mean, there's like no ego with these people. And it's amazing because they're so talented. And, but I remember she had come in from the UK. I had no idea, she'd come in from the UK, like switched planes, got on a car, whatever it is. And she showed up and did the scene where she, gives Sam away. And I was just like, I thank God that I was at a monitor being able to like witness this performance. And she did it again and again and again. And I remember she came out and she's like, did we get it? Did we get it? Did we get it? I don't know if I'm doing that. And I'm like, and I was with the writer's sister, and she's like, you are amazing. I'm like, we more than got it. And so anyway, in regards to, it all comes from somewhere in my life that I've pulled from. Church and the crosses and stuff like that, and Vivian. And it was important for me that the grandmother, because I know people that are very, that are very Christian, they go to church, whatever it is, but she loved this little boy. She didn't care. She didn't care that he wasn't fitting in with the other little boys. He was just a good, she loved him. He was a lovable kid. So.
At the same time, the film, it's set in Louisiana.
Yes.
And not on the East or the West Coast, where things would be, drastically different and people would be more accepting. But the fact that you said that story right there, I think it's Central America. So correct me if I'm wrong. Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So.
I grew up in New Jersey. So one of the highest compliments is the acting coach, Lori Lively, grew up in Georgia. And she's like, where are you from? And I'm like, I grew up in New Jersey. And she goes, this was so, it was a compliment because she felt it was authentic to, in the southern part of the States. But that was part of what inspired this is, and look, I love Louisiana. I had a great time and I've met wonderful people there. I've been to Florida. There's wonderful people in Florida as well. However, if you live in New York City and you live in LA, which I do, you can kind of you can be whatever you want to be. And that was partly what inspired it, because I was going for a walk in LA and I saw a little boy playing. And this was 10 years ago. And for me, I just immediately thought, and I was watching his father and this little boy who's probably about 7. And my thought was like, I wonder if he knows his kid's gay. Because sometimes I'm like, I could spot that one might be an alcoholic. That one might be whatever, I'm giving a label to it, but that was just what I thought. And I kept walking and I'm like, wow, you live in LA, you live in, sorry, I keep throwing my hair back. You live in LA, you live in New York City, you can be however you want to be. Although I will tell you, I've walked down the street in New York City with my girlfriend at the time. And, I don't know why some people have to yell things at you. But whatever. But anyway, at that time I saw this little boy and I kept walking and I was like, you could be however you want to be in LA and New York. And I was like, well, what if he lived somewhere that he was expected to play football? He was expected to be a certain way and he wasn't. And that's where the moment hit me, like where this is going to be. I don't know where this is going to take place. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Hearing you recount all the stories that, that happened to you, I definitely see the parallels between that and the film. And it's like, you all, I don't know who said this, but there goes the saying, which is like, you can't write more than 10 words without revealing something about yourself. And given the fact that it's true, a screenplay is essentially an extension of a screenwriter. So it's essentially your baby. So seeing your baby out there in the world, with people reacting to it, like once it's made, like how does that make you feel?
Oh
because
my
not
God.
all the reception's positive. Yeah. There's also negative reception as well.
Absolutely. And I remember when we were talking to Justin before he just, said yes to us. I was like, are you gonna be my baby's daddy or what? Because it was Palmer's my baby. And I'm like, and you be my baby's daddy if you place Palmer. And, but it was always, Palmer was thank you for saying that, because it was my baby. And I'm so proud of the execution and the reception. And it's true, not everyone. There's one kind, he was a critic, and I was like, anyway, he seems a little bitter because I've read some of his other reviews. He seems a little angry. And he's a gay gentleman as well. And he wrote, I'm like, I should frame this. He goes, this script looks like it was written in crayon. And I'm like, yeah, blue, pink, bitch. No, I read that review. And then I read some of his, I'm like, God, man, this guy's got some anger and hate. He's got a lot of hate in him. But, look, not every film is for my hair again. Not every film, there's films that I've seen that maybe some people love and that I haven't reacted to, but overall, the majority, I'm just so pleased that people are responding warmly to it, that audiences, and I'm not talking about critics, I'm talking about audiences, moviegoers, or there's so many texts and messages I've received, especially when I've gotten some from a guy who spent time in prison and got out, and he's spending time with his kid, or a mother who's like, my son or my daughter is going through this, and thank you so much. Like it makes it all so worthwhile. To know that people like have watched the film and they're like, oh my God, I'm bawling. I'm like, good. I'm glad you're having that experience. That was the point. That's the point. Like, you should cry or you should feel something. And whether it's sadness or whether it's joy or, hope, I'm so happy and so proud of it too. That it's gotten that reception that, there will always be someone that is not going to like your work. Whatever, there are people, you may like me, you may not like me. I tend to go where the love is. Like, that's my motto. Like, as a writer, as a human being, go where the love is. And so I've been going where the love is with Palmer and embracing it. And it just, even you reaching out to me, it just makes me so grateful and thankful and blessed that this got made. And not only did it get made, it got made in a manner and that people are, have felt, because I've felt that about films that I've seen. I remember I saw Peanut Butter Falcon. It's a wonderful film. I saw it in New York City. I went to see it by myself at the ArcLight. And I remember, I don't know anyone that was involved in that film. I mean, Shia LaBeouf was in it. And I remember walking out of the theater and I'm like, and I was on the phone with a friend. I'm like, you have to see this movie because it just how it made me feel after I saw it and stepped out into the streets of New York City. I'm like, that's a good film. Or like, Can You Ever Forgive Me with Melissa McCarthy? Can You Ever Forgive Me? Or is there a Please in there? Anyway, that was another film that I thought was wonderful. And, Promising Young Woman. That was another film in the past year that I really, I didn't feel all warm and fuzzy at the end. If you see that film, it's a little intense, but it's so well done and so well crafted and the performance, so but that's why, so when I go and I view film, that's why I'm appreciative. Like I get it when you respond to, when you know, see a film and maybe know nothing. That's what I really love. People that have seen Palmer, that like I'll see something on social media. I had no idea, you know, I just happened to watch this movie and they're saying how much they enjoyed it. So
Definitely. And the fact that, you know, given that the pandemic happened while the film was, you know, when it was being released, we went up on Apple TV, and instantly, you know, you can stream it like anywhere in the world where the subscription is available. So it essentially, you know, puts it out to a whole lot of people that you probably might not even reach if there was a theatrical release. So it has its pros and cons. Nothing like, you know, seeing a movie up on the big screen like we were talking about earlier. But yeah.
No, that's been amazing because I've had, they're mostly like they're fans of Justin, who these guys will translate the tweet for me because you know, it's in, you know, Portuguese or wherever it may be, or in, you know, Spanish, and my Spanish is not so good, and I don't speaks Portuguese, but they'll translate it for me. He said, you know, it was an actor, I don't know, Brazilian actor, Brazilian soccer player, like this guy, huge, well, football player, and he saw it and he was tweeting about it or did a video about it. I'm like, that's amazing. Yeah, so that was cool. You know, when you see it from all over the world, and see people, you know, audiences' response to it from like different parts of this amazing world. So
100%. You said that you came from an athletic background.
yeah.
Did anything from your athletic background kind of carry over, like transferable skills into writing? I kind of want to.
Wow, you're like 100%. I mean, I think that's, how do I say this? Being an athlete, every team I've ever played in, I think has helped me more in life than the education, than any test I've ever taken, than any, like, honestly, the thing that has helped me most in life is being part of a sports team. And I was playing sports since I was 8 years old. Like my parents are like, this one needs to run. Like my sister, not an athletic bone in her body, but me, I came out like, give me a ball, like just like keep me active. So one, I think it kept me out of trouble being on sports teams because I was too busy. Like I was playing one sport, then another sport and traveling and doing this and that. It kept me occupied. Like I didn't have time to, you know, get into drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. I mean, you can still, you know, you celebrate after you win or when you lose, but it's just, you know, I've had some amazing coaches and you know, and I'm competitive too. And I love competing, but being a part of a sports team, I think, you know, it teaches you how to get along with people and how to succeed and just to keep, and the perseverance, like you just keep going. Like you may have a loss, but you get up and you play again, and you know, and if you win, you keep going. And it's just, I think it's the perseverance. And yeah, I mean, it 100%. I don't think I'd be, I don't know. I was going to say, I don't know if I'd be where I was without the, you know, athletic background. And look, it's a tough business. Like I know, you know, and for me, it's setting a goal. Like I kept going because I'm not like, this is where I want to be. And this is the dream I want to pursue. And that was to be a writer, and to essentially living the life that I'm living was something I was dreaming about. And I'll say this, if I had never, I believe in signs. And for me, you know, there were indications to keep going, because trust me, there was many times in my journey in this industry that I wanted to quit. You know, I don't know, and I'll be honest, I don't always love the industry. I don't always love the business side of this. In fact, a lot of times I don't. But I love when I'm sitting with a director. I love when I'm sitting with an actor. I love when I'm being creative and collaborating. I love when I'm writing. You know, it's like, I guess, a musician when you're playing your instrument. My instrument is when I'm creating this world and this characters and how that makes me feel. And that's how I knew, like, this is what I want to do. And so then you have the business side of it. And I don't know how many rejections I've thousands, probably. I remember when I wrote my book, well, out of the gate, I got an agent at a very big agency. The manuscript, the book was sitting on someone else's desk. She just happened to read it, called my manager, and she's like, where is this at? So she took it. Now it was a first draft. And I'm like, oh, maybe the book world's different. And she sent it out. She had 8 passes and then she was done. And I was like, 8? I'm like, that's nothing. Let me know when you've gotten 100 rejections then, or 1,000. So I got it back and I'm like, okay, let me set the number. I'm going to try to get a lit agent. And I set the number at 50. I'm like, I'm going to query, email 50 lit agents. So all of them passed except one. And she didn't take me on. And I'm like, okay, let me see what publishers I can send the book to. And I picked like 5 indies and 3 wanted it. And so that indie publisher picked up my book. It's got like probably 1,000 reviews right now, doing well in the reviews. But my current manager took that out. I wrote a TV pilot based off it. He took my TV pilot out and someone purchased the movie rights and hired me to write it into a movie. So my point with all that is that was, I think that's the athlete in me. It's just like, I'm not going to stop. Like, I believe in it. And I think it's a matter of like believing in it and finding those people that believe in it as well. And here's the thing, I don't need you. There's a story now, I can't mention it, hopefully soon, that I just believe in it. It was something I came across when I wanted to quit being a writer. And I heard about, I came across this story and I'm like, this is about never quitting. This is about the American dream or whatever it is. And so I'm passionate about telling that story. But but I believe in signs too. So I'd get a check here or I'd get a little check here, and then the checks became bigger. And if I make money, other people make money too. So, but I don't work like that. I don't write I don't think like, I'm going to write this and I'm going to sell, I want to be like, it's not, yes, I want to make a living but for me, it's just how it makes me feel when I'm creating it and wanting to put it out into the world for other people to experience what I've experienced.
It's always interesting to hear, the transferable skills that, the guests, like whoever's been on this show from before. Some have been like drummers, like there's others who come from like various other industries. And there's always something that, they've transferred into the land of filmmaking. And that's amazing. But the most common 2 factors are resilience and perseverance.
Yeah.
And that has just echoed throughout every single interview. And that's probably like the common factor, the secret ingredient every single filmmaker's got to have.
Sure, I agree. Look, I didn't know anyone. My dad's a hairdresser. I didn't know anybody in the industry. My last name I don't have, there isn't anyone in my family that's in the industry. And it was just, it was having a dream and going after it and just continuing to persevere. And
Talk to me a little bit about your book. So you mentioned that it's being turned into a TV pilot, or is it a feature film now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the thing about my book. So I originally wrote it as a script. And it had been optioned 5 times, like 4 or 5 times. So that means like 4, I'll just keep the number at 4. 4 different producers or directors wanted to make my script into a movie. Didn't happen. And I was on a hike and I bumped into the director, producer, and he's like, oh, how you doing? I'm like, good. And so I keep going up the hill and I'm like, man, he couldn't get it made into a movie. And then what hit me was, well, you don't need him to make it into a movie, write it into a book. And it came from, I pray So I think it was like, I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I had come across an article about another writer. She was getting frustrated with things almost getting made, and she started writing them into novels. And it was the one screenplay that I felt like best lent itself into being written into a novel. So I started writing it into, and it wasn't easy. I much prefer screenplays. I much prefer screenplays than being a novelist. But I did. I sat down every day and I started writing it, and I knew the beginning, middle, and end, and I just kept like I did with when I write a book. When I write a screenplay, I watch movies that are similar. I read scripts that are similar just to get in that world. So when I started writing my novel or book, I started reading other, like, Hunger Games or what is it? I forget. What's the name? Where is it? I'm looking on my shelf. I forget what, I started reading similar, that I felt like kind of similar. And I wrote it. And so, yeah, my manager, he's like, we want you to write a TV pilot. I'm like, okay. So I gave a bunch of ideas, sent it off. And the one that he liked the most was based off my book, which I knew it would be. It's a gang. It's a female gang. She infiltrates the gang in order to find out who killed her sister. And she becomes friends with these girls. And it's kind of like Donnie Brasco meets Set It Off meets, if you've ever seen those movies, yeah, they go undercover. And so I wrote a TV pilot based off my book. And and someone in his office read it and really liked it, so much so that she was talking to someone. She's like, you need to read this. And they read it, and they met with me, and they're like, look, we want to make this into a movie. And I'm like, perfect. I'm like, because I've had like 100 drafts of it as a movie. So they did an option on the book, and then they hired me to adapt it into a screenplay. And I have so many drafts of it, but it became more actiony, the screenplay. I'm excited about it because I'm hoping actually that they let me direct it. That would be, we'll see. We have, yeah, I know. We have a call next week, more notes on the script. But I threw that
amazing.
In. Yeah. And I never felt that way about, I knew with Palmer, this is not for me to direct, but with this particular script and my feeling is what I would love to do is surround myself with a great team of people that will help me bring it to the screen and make me look good, and that would be the cinematographer and stunt coordinators and everything that goes into that, because it has more action, the gang script. It's a drama, but there's also shootouts and car chases and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Pretty excited to read this because I haven't managed to get my hands on a copy yet, but anyone who wants to can find it on Amazon, yeah?
Yeah. Yes. You should be. I mean, you should be able to get everything on Amazon. I mean, I don't know how it is there, but here it's like, oh, I need a toothbrush. I don't feel like leaving my place.
It's on Amazon. There you go.
That's so lazy. There's like stores to go to, and I'm like, no, I'm going to get my tube of toothpaste from Amazon. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I mean, yeah.
Not gonna judge you. Don't worry.
Yes, thank you. My laziness.
But with Girl on Point, your novel, like it's gone through like full circle and like a majority of the media spectrum, like from a novel to a TV pilot to a feature film screenplay. Who knows? You might even like get an offer to write a theater screenplay. What do you call it? A play?
Yeah, I mean that would be great. Yeah.
But so writing a novel versus writing a screenplay, you obviously prefer writing screenplays. I know these are two totally different avenues. But what, if anything, have you learned from writing the novel and then coming back to a screenplay? What's that taught you?
Ooh, great questions. Well, with a screenplay, it's always less is more. so in very few words, you need to convey like an image or a feeling. Like in a book, you just have a lot more space. I mean, my thing is sometimes I read books and I'm like, how you're like taking pages to describe your kitchen or something. I'm like, it just seems a little excessive. I mean, but you really, in a novel, there's more description. There's more, you're just going on longer. And in a screenplay, it's just lean, like less is more, because a screenplay is anywhere from like 90 pages to 120. And I tend to overwrite, so my scripts tend to be longer. But there was, and it made it into the script and it came out of the script because it was just, for me, sometimes there was a moment, I forget how I wrote. It was one of the scenes when Palmer was in the bar in the beginning, and I wrote in my script, he sits there alone and feels every bit of it. It may have gotten taken out or whatever, but for me, I think that for me at least, I understand what that, because I've experienced being in a room with people and I felt completely alone, and this was a guy who just got out of prison, and you're trying to, you were in prison for 12 years. And now you're not in that environment. And, but anyway, I think I'm going off on a tangent. I think with a script, it's just, I'm not required to, fill up the entire page. In a novel, it's just a lot more writing, a lot more description. And I like that with screenplays. I think it's just it's like playing an instrument. I much prefer this instrument than that instrument. Now, I will tell you, during the pandemic, I wrote another novel because I just wanted to torture myself. But it was more personal. It wasn't fictitious. Actually, it was a memoir kind of that I wrote. And I had started it and then I stopped it because it was just too personal. And at the time, I'm like, I can't keep writing this right now. But during the pandemic, I reread what I wrote. I'm like, I think I can finish this now. And I did. So, but yeah, I think it's just, for me, I think it's how you're built. Like, some people might prefer writing novels versus screenplays, and it's a different craft. So, it's a different craft.
I tend to notice, I read novels as well, but then I read novels written by certain people who used to be screenwriters, and it's easier to just get through. It's most of the time they tend to be page turners.
And I will say, people that have read the book, I don't know who they are, because I'll occasionally look at the reviews, and people will be like, oh, this I could see this as a movie, and it's probably because, well, a screenwriter wrote it, or it was a page turner, kept me turning the pages, or I read this in like 2 nights. I take that as a huge compliment, but it's probably because, visually how my mind works and how I think is kind of in a movie lens, if that makes sense. Like, my lens might be different than someone else. So yeah, but that's been a huge compliment, that people were like, oh, it was like I couldn't put it down. I'm like, that's a huge compliment to me with that book. Yeah.
You mentioned previously that you tend to overwrite when you write a screenplay. So I'm pretty sure like a chunk of what you've written gets left out of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
How badly does that hurt?
I love working with Fisher because he's like, take this out, take this out. I'm like, don't you touch my words, leave my words the way they are. But I understand, because as a director, he thinks in a certain way and he has to see it, through his lens, and translating it, into, a moving picture. So, but yeah, everyone, yeah. How do I say? I edit this part out.
No, it's all good. It's authentic. What I kind of wanted to get out of you was like how, as a writer, and you were on set, you are also serving as producer. So seeing certain things being omitted out of your screenplay, not ending up on screen, and then when you watch the movie, you're like, do you feel like bits and pieces are missing?
Oh, you ask good questions. Yes. I mean, to be honest, look, there is a scene in the movie now that was shot different than how I wrote it, and I will tell you, I love it. Because it was money. It was a budget thing. And I remember I showed up at set and Fisher's like, sorry, Cheryl, we had to cut that. And I was like, but I understood because it was a money thing and it was a time thing, and we didn't have either. And this is a testament to him, or how do I say it? Kudos to Fisher, because we had to quickly change it. And it was a scene towards the end where Justin's character is packing up the house, and through the window he sees Sam by his trailer, and he waves and Sam waves, and that was not how I originally wrote it. It was written a different way, and I do love how I wrote the scene. I'm not gonna, I don't know if I'm biased. Well, I am biased, but because I wrote that scene. But I loved how that was filmed because you felt the separation. Like when I watch that scene, I love it because it makes me, I really feel like they are being separated. Look, there was a line, and I'll be honest, in my script that I think was so, anytime anyone read the script, they're like, they would always point out this line. And it was when, and it didn't make it into the final edit. And it's when Miss Maggie, the school teacher, comes to the house to check on Sam, and she goes, it's good of you what you're doing for him. And Palmer says what he says. And her line, it used to be written that Palmer's character goes, well, a kid like Sam, he's going to have trouble the way he is. And Miss Maggie's line was Sam knows exactly who he is. It's everyone else that has the problem. Now that line never made it into the film. And do I miss it when I watch it? Yeah. I mean, I will be, and you can't be precious. Like, look, I'm very proud of the film. I love the film. Do I like that line? Yeah. Would I have liked that line to have made it in? Yes. But does it, there's a lot of things. There were some scenes with, Juno Temple's character, there were more scenes with her and Sam that, I would have liked to have seen made it into the film. But when you edit it, they'll say there's the film, there's what you write, and there's what you shoot, and then there's what you edit. And, people watch it and comment on it before it's final and before it's locked. But so there's certain things that I feel like, that I was maybe sentimental about, or that I miss being in there. But then there's other things that I think are absolutely, that I love, that came out of, however, it changed. That, wasn't how I maybe originally wrote it. And I'm like, oh, I really like how this scene turned out. And then the ones that I absolutely love, like I Can Be the First, like that's how I wrote it. And just,
I think for the record, I think that was like the best line in the film, personal thingy, but I just love that so much.
Yeah, thanks. And just, and the performances in it, and with, and Justin and Ryder, they just were, great together. I mean, it couldn't have asked for anything, they're teaming, and it was just great.
Again, personal opinion, I feel like Miss Maggie's line could have been included, but at the same time, it was essentially part of, what she says is part of the whole subtext of the movie. So it's there, like once you watch the movie, you kind of get it. So I guess leaving it out didn't do too much of a damage. It didn't really damage the movie in any way, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I think sometimes things came out because it's like, we get that. So it doesn't need to be said. So I can appreciate that as well. It's like, okay, and that you're saying that, like, we get that. It doesn't need to be said, which is probably why it didn't make it into the film. you know.
Exactly. And talking about Ryder Allen, like he's a kid, and that performance that he brings out, it's amazing. You have a saying in the industry like "Don't look at kids and animals," but watching Ryder on screen, like he feels older than he actually is. It's like I don't know what the term is, but it feels like he feels older. Like also, I think that's what I'm trying to get at. He feels like an old soul kid.
He's more mature than I am. I mean, he is an old soul. I mean, I feel like there's old souls and there's young souls and there's immature souls, and he is. I mean, I love that child. He was because he's such a good kid, you know, and he was 7 years old when we filmed that, and
we're gonna have to get you Ryder's hair clip.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm going to see this later and be like, leave your hair.
It's all good. I'm just kidding.
I need that hair clip. I know. But no, I mean, he's like a sponge too. And you can see the difference. Like he has talent, and he's also wise, just full of, he is an old soul. So when it was interesting, you know, watching him work with, you know, with Fisher and Justin and his acting coach, and he takes it in, and he understands, and he delivers. I mean, I want to keep working with him, because I want to keep working with all of them, honestly, because it was just such a great experience. Yeah, but you nailed it. I mean, he's more mature than I am. I mean, he's got a lot of wisdom, and he's 9 now. So, yeah.
Wow. You served as producer on Palmer as well. So did you have any non-negotiable elements when it came to dealing with Fisher?
I'm only the writer. I mean, I'm executive producer. I mean, look, and here's...
But still, as the writer, did you have anything that was non-negotiable?
Great question. I mean, here's the thing with Fisher, and with anyone that's the director. And that's what I think as writers you have to understand. Unless it's TV, it operates differently. But when it's a movie, it's the director's vehicle. And it should be. Like, it's like having so many, you can't have like 1,000 cooks in the kitchen. There's one chef, and that is the director. And fortunately, he is someone that truly, I mean, I want to keep working with Fisher, because I don't know if I'll continue to have that experience. And I have been. I'm working with other people that value, you know, I mean, look, there were some things he's like, sorry, Cheryl, this is how it is. And I'm like, damn it. And then other things where he's like, okay, don't send me another text. I get it. And, but I would explain why I felt a certain way. And I'm trying to think, I mean, I did say to him, I said, look, when she gives him away, I better cry. Like, I better cry. And I do cry. I do cry when I see that, when I first watch it, and even to today when I watch it. But I mean, look, the director has the final say. Unless I have written in my, you know, maybe there's other writers out there, which I'm sure there are, that basically have the final word. It's very rare. I mean, like, I'm not going to have the final word. You know, the people that put the money in may. But I love this story. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Seven. With
Fincher's
yes.
movie? Yes.
So good. The script is fantastic. But I remember, if this is true, Brad Pitt had in his contract that there was something that happened at the end of the movie. He said, this stays the way it is. And I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen the movie. You should watch the movie, find it on Amazon or Apple, and rent it. But so I watched the movie. I remember, you know, it's been some years, but there was something that happened at the end of the movie. The studio wanted to change that. They wanted a different ending. And Brad Pitt was like, nope, it's in my contract. And they had to keep it, the ending that was in the script, they had to keep it in the movie, because he was smart enough to realize they're probably going to try to change this. And I think that's part of what makes that movie brilliant, is they kept the ending how it is. I mean, As far as non-negotiable, I mean, I'm not that, I mean, even with Fisher, I mean, he's the director, but the producers could have, I believe they allowed him, to have the final cut, but they could have been like, no, we're changing this. And they gave notes and everyone, and he would, when it was being cut, I'll tell you this, he invited me into the editing room. I was there, and that is him. That's Fisher Stevens. And I don't, I mean, how many directors allow that? I mean, that's amazing. He's a good dude. And, there was something, and I remember, and it wasn't him, it was how it was cut. And because I think Fisher was off, I forget where he was during the day, and I was with the editor, and something was moved. And it was basically when Sam puts on the lipstick. And the editor had it after Palmer gave him away. The editor moved it. So Palmer brings him to get rid of him, to like Shelley took off and Palmer's stuck with him, and he brings him to the police station to get rid of him. And then he comes home and you see Sam putting on the lipstick. And I said to the editor, I said, no, I'm like that. Sorry, here we go. I said, that needs to go before he gets rid of him, because that is a moment that makes him uncomfortable. Like, he's getting rid of this kid because like this little boy's putting on lipstick, and he just wants him out of his space. So that was something where I just happened to be, because I was included in the editing process, or I was invited into the room and saw that. And even if I wasn't invited into the room, I may have seen that like sent to me digitally or whatever. And, obviously Fisher felt the same way as I felt. And he's like, no, move it to prior to him giving him away. But as far as being non-negotiable, like all I can do is express my opinion. And it can either be well received or not received. And sometimes, it's like, it's a red shirt or it's a blue shirt. You may prefer red and I may prefer blue, and it's not a right or wrong. It's just a preference. So, yeah.
That makes sense. So coming back to the writing side of things, so when you start writing, I'm not gonna try and get into your process because I think I don't know if that's it's a secret thing or whatever, but if you could divulge that, please feel free to. My question is, once you've written something, do you get trusted people to like rip it apart?
100%. And if I send you something, you're not allowed to say I like it or I don't like it. You have to tell me why, because it doesn't serve me. Like for example, most recently I wrote a treatment for something, and it's based on someone's book, or it's based on someone's life. And I've taken what is essentially like 300 pages, 400 pages, and I put it into a 4-page document of, how I see the movie and what's the feeling, what's it about. So I gave it to some people to read. And, for me, even with the script, I want to know, does it hold your interest? Okay. Is there something you have? What are your problems with? Is there something you have a problem with? Is there something that doesn't work for you? What do you love? What do you like best about this? So I don't, and I give it to people. I mean, there might be people I give it to because their grammar is really good, and I know I put a comma in the wrong place. And there are people that are really good with story. And, so I have certain readers, and it's people that I respect, or people that I think are intelligent and creative. And there are some that just might be easier reads, and it's just like, I'm giving it to them. Does it hold your attention? But it's so valuable it's like with movies, when studios they pay to have audiences come in and watch a film and do their cards, what they liked, what they didn't like. Like they pay a lot of money before they release a film to do that. So as a writer, like I may, and also it's kind of like, I feel like I'm the athlete on the field, and my coach may have a different perspective, in that I'm so close to it. Like, I know what I'm trying to convey, but maybe I didn't convey it. and you might read it and be like, oh, I didn't understand that. And I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do. Or I remember with Palmer, I had a friend read it, and he goes, I want to know what's happening in the house, because I think I stopped Palmer from going in or something like that. And then I ended up writing probably what ended up being one of my favorite scenes. Or I had someone read it, and actually I'll give him a shout out. I love him. Don Mancini, he's the creator of Chucky. And he had read it and was very complimentary. And he had said something about, it was after Sam, like Daryl does what he does to Sam, like when the adult does what he does to Sam. And I had a scene with Palmer and Sam, but he said something to me, like, don't you think he would talk to him at this point, would say something to him? And I went deeper, and I wrote that Palmer's like, you didn't do anything wrong. Like what he did to you was wrong. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it was because someone gave me a note that made me go deeper in the interaction of these two characters. So, and even when Justin read it, he had something which I ended up loving. And I think it's such an emotional moment. And I'll give him a shout out, because when we were making it, God, budget, but I would get a call from Fisher. He's like, we got to cut another scene. Money. It was about money. And I'm like, you got to be kidding, And I'm like, okay. Like, so we're trying to trim things because of the money we're being given to make this. And so we took something out, and Justin had read it. He goes, Palmer needs to get arrested. Like, he needs to go to prison. And at one of my versions of the script, that did happen, but it was taken out, or whatever happened. It happened at a different point. So I said, okay. And I wrote the scene where Sam chases after the car, and Palmer is, he's put in the vehicle. Because prior to that scene ended before that happened. And he wasn't put in the car, and Sam did. And because Justin said, like, he needs to get arrested. And I think it's like, I bawl when Sam is running after the vehicle and screaming, Palmer. So, that's a note that was given on the script. It's like, okay, how about this? And even now with another, at some point you got to be like, okay, we got to, with other projects at certain points, like, you can just keep developing it. And at a certain point, but when something's ready, like, you knew Palmer was ready, and all these things help to enhance it or make it better. But yeah, that for me, it's part of the process. Like, I don't put anything out there until I've had my trusted people read. And I do the same for other people. Like, I'm like, if you need something, let me know. And yeah, it's a time commitment though too. So, you have to pick and choose. So yeah.
That's so cool. Justin's note definitely made quite a lot of difference, because I can't imagine how the film would have been if he did not get arrested. It's
sure.
Yeah. I can't wrap my head around it, but yeah, that goes to show how powerful collaboration can be yet again, during the writing process. So yeah, we had a question regarding how do you get your mindset ready for writing? So I'm going to add a little bit to that.
Okay.
So with your writing process, like, let's say you have these down days, do you say push it aside for another day, like procrastinate, or do you push through it? Like, do you barrel through it?
That question's coming from a writer. I know that. Here's the thing that I've learned to do is to not beat myself, because I would beat myself up for, like, you haven't written anything in, a couple weeks. And here's the thing, like, there were times where I'd be like, okay, Cheryl, just sit in front of, you're going to sit in front of your computer and you're going to give yourself an hour, because I wasn't creating anything. I wasn't feeling inspired or motivated or whatever it was. And you're just going to force yourself to to sit in front of, this is your job. You're going to sit here for an hour or two. And maybe I just wrote the F word over and over and over because I'm like, nothing's coming out. But I mean, look, I was, sometimes what I do is I go on a hike and I listen to music, or I watch movies that inspire me. And this, for me, is part of the creative process, or I talk to other writers. Like, there's times in my life that, I was back east and I was dealing with I wasn't, maybe for a month, I wasn't writing anything. And here's the thing, and then when I got back, I was writing like mad on something. And that's just, that's when it was flowing for me. Like, I was listening to a bunch of music, I was going for walks. And I think for me, it's like, I also, I'm someone, I do exercise, I go on hikes. If I don't do that for a while, I feel like shit. Like, if I don't go on a hike or go for a walk or whatever it is, I can feel it. Like, I need to, my body needs to be exercised. And so does my brain and creative. So, because I'll get a little tight or a little edgy or whatever it is. And so I got back to Los Angeles and I got into this one story, this adaptation, my idea on it. And I loved, it's like a painting for me. So I'll just keep going over it over and over. And here's the thing, like, sometimes I am someone, and I did this with Palmer, I will just stay on the first act. Like, I will not move on to my second act. It's like painting a wall until I feel like I'm okay with moving on. I'll just keep rereading it and I'll keep tweaking it. And I'm not, and I think as a writer, it's just, I can't beat myself up. I can't beat myself up for, well, this person just, turned out 3 scripts, and maybe that person did, but maybe they're shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I can't compare myself to, I have to compare myself to me and what I put out. And if I'm not feeling it, because sometimes people will say you can't wait for inspiration. But I can help myself by going for a walk and listening to music. I can help myself by watching a movie that inspires me, or talking to another creative person about something that helps to inspire me. And then, I sit down and then I turn out something that I'm like, wow, I actually kind of like that. So I think it's just like, as a writer, it's like giving yourself a break that, oh, I didn't write today. I was on Twitter, or I wrote like for 5 minutes and then I'm on Instagram, like scrolling like obsessively, or, on social media. I don't know anyone who doesn't do that, and then I'll get into a creative mode, and it's just like not going to make any plans with you because I don't know, when I'm going to pop up, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I connect to the whole thing where you said, if you don't get any exercise, you don't kind of feel good. And, it's like your body asks for it and it affects your writing. So mind-body connection, all that. So I totally connect with you on that one. Cheryl, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And congratulations on Palmer. And
Thank you.
all the very best on, everything else that you're working on. And I'm pretty sure we're going to hear more from you pretty soon. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Yeah. So
Awesome. That's it, folks. And till then, this is Junkyard Theory.